I am very, very excited about this episode. You told me that Alex Jones and Joe Rogan were on a podcast again, and I was like, what the hell? I thought that they were fighting. I thought that they have become sworn enemies to the end, and here they are making up like out of some kind of an anime series.
It reminds me of that One Piece. No, I haven't seen One Piece, so I can't make the references.
But I can. That is perfect. Because in One Piece, there were two characters, Luffy, the main character, and Usopp, who was one of his crewmates. The nakama, as they say in Japanese, which is like friend, but even more so. Anyway, Luffy and Usopp ended up fighting against each other because Luffy wanted to get rid of their old ship and Usopp did not. So in the end, Usopp had to get back to the team, not as himself, but he put on this mask and called himself Soga King, the king of the snipers, I believe. And Luffy fell for it because he's kind of a dumbass. But anyway, this was Usopp's way of getting in back to the crew because he felt a little bit ashamed of having done what he had done before to Luffy. So I think it's a story of redemption, and I think this is a similar one, but on both counts. On the count of Joe Rogan, who was constantly talking about the Sandy Hook stuff related to Alex Jones.
Well, Joe Rogan, what does Joe Rogan need to be forgiven for? Joe Rogan, what did he do wrong?
The only thing that I'd say that he did, I wouldn't even say wrong, but he was emphasizing Sandy Hook for the longest time, even after Alex Jones has already denied it. Now, Joe Rogan attributes that just to him not keeping up to date with every single thing Alex has been saying. But at a certain point, it does seem like Joe tries to play, he tries to play both sides of the spectrum, and I think for good reason. He doesn't want to piss people off needlessly. He wants to have a good relationship with Jack Dorsey from Twitter, and he wants to have a good relationship with his core base that got super pissed that he wasn't grilling Jack Dorsey enough.
People don't like doxing, which is a new word. I don't know how old the word doxing is. What is it exactly? It's when there's information that's publicly available online, and doxing is when you compile and organize that available information and make it public, like talking about a person's location or where they live or their email address, their phone number. That's doxing. And so for most people, like we used to have the yellow pages, right? People, phone books. We still know what phone books are, even though I can't remember the last time I saw a phone book. But doxing is something that I don't really, I understand why people don't like doxing. I think that's what the social media people are anticipating. I think they saw the Arab Spring happen, so they know social media's potential as a tool. When George Soros says things like, oh, social media is a menace to society, and Google and Facebook are slaves to their own dominance. And then Lady Gaga talks about how social media is a toilet or a cesspool and stuff. So even though Jeff Bezos 2 years ago was defending, like his free speech position was to defend even ugly speech, it's interesting what the tech giants, what alarms them when it comes to freedom of speech and social media. It's not necessarily that they care about what a person's saying, but how motivating a person is, right? Like Milo, for example, had a bunch of trolls. So he could like poke a joke at someone and then a bunch of people would just start harassing that person. But the thing is, it seems disproportionate and uneven-handed. Maybe I'm crazy, but I could have recalled politicians on the left who were, what was Eric Holder saying? Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi in the past. These are people that have said, hey, get in people's faces, speak up, stand up. So,
and that is not something that, despite Alex Jones questioning certain aspects of Sandy Hook, which he then took back, he never said, hey, you guys, go out there and get these families. Like, in that sense, anybody could make the assumption that just because somebody talks about something, that there are going to be armies of people that are going to keep going after them. But on that latest podcast, Jones's whole point was that it's the media that keeps bringing Sandy Hook up every single time they mention him. And that's even worse as far as bringing out the curiosity of people to actually seek out these families in the first place. Like, let the goddamn thing die already, you know? Like, it's not something that he wants to define himself by, nor is it something that I think helps the families heal when you keep bringing this thing up every single time.
Well, that's the thing, is people underestimate how much they do to perpetuate trauma and how much they do to inject trauma into places where it shouldn't be. Like, divide and conquer as an abstract, like if people are trying to divide and conquer, the first thing they want is to make it impossible for you to be able to get along. They want to have agree to disagree be pervasive, right? They want this I couldn't understand you even if I tried mentality to be pervasive, right? They want you to believe that people can't be persuaded. They're all about self-confirmation bias. People think of bias as some kind of like irredeemable thing. They don't see it as just error, right? If you look at bias as a myth and just see it as it's an error in thinking, like what can you do to correct the error?
I don't know what you can do to correct the error for somebody who is so deep into their religion, but those people are few and far between when it comes to people who just go about their lives normally and accept whatever it is considered in the mainstream to accept. I think those people, like on the internet, they would call them quote unquote normies. I know that's kind of a derogatory term.
What religion are you talking about, though?
I'm talking about
because are we the ones, or because do we have a religion? My religion is love. I don't know beyond that. Like, I'm a Gnostic, or I'm a chaos magician, or I'm a druid, or my religion is love. Like,
well, I'm talking about intersectionality. I'm talking about when people divide people into racial categories of victimhood and then determine, as Ocasio-Cortez talks about, not just equality, but equity, as in putting people in certain positions of power based on the notion of some kind of inherent power, some of them, like white people, had in the past. So she does not want people to have an even playing field. She wants people to have an inverted playing field based on whatever happened in the past. And I am totally against that. Martin Luther King was totally against that. Nobody wants to put people in these categories that they have no way of getting out of. If you're a white male, you belong over here. And if you're a disabled Muslim, you belong over here. You know, like, that is just an imbecilic Nick Jr. mentality type of way of looking at things. And this loud minority has been looking at it this way for a long time. And I think that they've been pressuring and bullying a lot of the more mainstream liberals who don't really care about this crap to either go with what they're talking about or be labeled a bigot or a racist. It's hard, man. It's I'm having conversations now with people who are in this centrist left type of situation, and they don't see eye to eye with these ideologues. They just regular people in the arts who design stuff, who have good taste in music, good taste in houseplants, and they don't want to bother going against the flow either. Like, they don't want to be the grass that sticks out. And unfortunately, like, I wish that there were more people who weren't like that. I wish there were more people like Alex Jones who were calling out various things. The only problem with Alex Jones is that he throws a lot of things at the wall. So, okay, here's how I would divide a lot of the things that Alex Jones talks about. I would divide it as in things that you can look up and instantly see, absolutely, this is exactly what he's talking about. We can verify it in this mainstream publication. You could also have a category of things that you cannot verify unless you do like real grueling research, read biographies of various world leaders, you know, just get the nitty gritty in. Sometimes I find that with all the information on the internet, we still don't have enough resources to confirm certain things unless we do real deep digging. And then we have the category of things that are just anecdotal. Like, somebody told Alex something, and this was a person Alex claims to be like in the top echelons of the government. So the only thing we have going for us is his word. And that's not enough, right? We can't go by that. Like, we have to have out of the horse's mouth type stuff. So what I want to do today is present certain things.
Well, Alex Jones would say the same. And that's why he probably said in the past, look into the Sandy Hook thing, because he's a crowdsourcer. Like, people probably people do give Alex Jones leads, right? He has all these sources, he gets his articles from a lot of places. So when there's a very deep story, Alex Jones wants to just confirm way beyond doubt, he puts it out there. But the problem is you have Cortez saying someone's stalking her while she's eating a burger, which is preposterous language to use. She's a public figure. And is she the first person in Congress to not have her home or place of work listed? Like, that's the point of the job. Like, first of all, when the founders made the Constitution, they were not supposed to be career politicians. It was supposed to be service. Like, the banker could do it, the farm owner, the sporting goods store owner, the film director, whatever it was. But now it's just become political science. You go to law school, you write a book, your buddies buy it, so it becomes a bestseller, right? So you, like, a lot of these people that have bestsellers, it's like you just put it up and then you have your buddy buy 20,000 copies or something, and it's like, bingo, like, I have a New York Times bestseller. Right? It's like all these politicians, oh, wow, they really write the bestsellers, right? It's like, no, their buddies buy them and then they give them out and put them in gift bags and put them in the front of stores and things like that. And people do buy them. But anyway.
Well, people read all of these bestsellers, and a lot of the regular people have a certain idea of what the government is and what politicians are. They read things about the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany, and they think like, oh, this stuff is in the past. It's never going to come back to us. Of course, today, a lot of people assume that that's what's come back to us through Donald Trump. But as far as the more sane individuals go today, I would highly encourage them to look up some of the things that Alex Jones was talking about as we were doing after the podcast. So these are straight out of the horse's mouth type things that nobody is arguing about. For example, when he was talking about the U.S. apologizing for Guatemala STD experiments, and this is on NBCnews.com, U.S. government medical researchers intentionally infected hundreds of people in Guatemala, including institutionalized mental patients, with gonorrhea and syphilis without their knowledge or permission more than 60 years ago. Now, just because it's 60 years ago, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen today, as far as somebody like a Cortez or whatever coming into power and doing certain things she sees as being for the benefit of mankind, while resulting in a lot of crap and a lot of hardship and a lot of chaos occurring who knows where. Like, we have to keep our eyes on these people.
It's unbelievable. It's an unbelievable story. Like, when you hear that story, you're like, that's impossible.
Well, as far as more recent stuff goes, we have a lot of stuff having to do with China that Alex Jones talked about, like how Google didn't want to bid later on for some cushy gig at the Pentagon, but instead they went to China. So I looked up both situations, and yes, there was an article. Google will not bid for the Pentagon's $10 billion cloud computing contract, citing its AI principles. The principles are about how artificial intelligence should or should not be used. But then on the flip side, you have another article from Task and Purpose, The Hidden Moral Pitfalls of Google, China, and Artificial Intelligence, where they talked about Google opening a new AI research center in China, expanding its presence in the country, and that China was seen as an attractive option for AI research because it's a huge market and there is a lack of privacy laws. However, Google said that they will not allow their technology to be used for weapons or surveillance that would violate internationally accepted norms. Good luck. All right, I have had enough of all of these companies saying, like, we're not going to step over this line. It's like, how do I know? I'm not going to trust you. I don't trust these people with our data. I don't trust them with keeping any of this stuff safe. Like, if it's out in the open, it's out in the open, fine. But especially when it comes to an authoritarian government like China, you're telling me that you're going to be able to hold the line between China and our data? I don't think so. Same thing with Apple.
These people want a one-world government. There are real people that want a one-world government. And we can all say that all the politicians who are professional politicians and took poli-science courses in college about never say what you really believe because it's unelectable and it won't work in the government. So let's just believe a bunch of none of the politicians in our government want a one world government, right? But there's a lot of mainstream liberals who casually talk about it. Like you have Bill Maher joking about like, can we like be China, or can China be our daddy, or like, can we like, I forgot what Bill Maher said, but the point is, if you were going to redefine the law, right? Like our whole economic system is based on law and numbers on pages, right? So when Foucault or Yuval Noah Harari say it's all made up, it's all imaginary, it's all based on faith, you know, they're pointing out that there is religion, and as much there is religion in the state, as much as they want to say that there should be separation of church and state, they don't quite understand why someone like Mencius Moldbug would call the government, the mainstream media, and the academic system as the cathedral, right? Because postmodernism and Hegelianism is religious. Like the way that, like if you listen to why Sam Harris laments Jordan Peterson's epistemology, he'll ask Jordan Peterson, tell me about truth. And Jordan Peterson will wax and wane poetic. You'll see the same exact thing from someone like Zizek or Zizek. Slavjov Zizek.
I'm not going to even try. I trust you.
Slavaj.
Well, you were talking about this being a church. You were talking about this being a church, and the church has its priests that get shipped out to different places after they're done molesting whatever kids happen to be in the original area. And I see a similar mentality with a lot of these elite people where they think that whatever it is that's going to happen, we're going to be the ones on top. It's not going to affect us. It's only going to affect the little people. They don't have any skin in the game, so why should they care?
Well, I'm not sure. The skin in the game thing, I'm going to say I've been hearing a lot, and I think it's a great buzz phrase, like calling the Green New Deal a big watermelon or something, green on the outside, red on the inside. I do think that skin in the game is prone to use and abuse, because you can say someone has a position with no skin in the game, but then, you know, but if they're suffering consequences, is like for their non-skin in the game, isn't that what equivalents skin in the game? So the thing is, I love Nassim Taleb. Anti-Fragile is one of my favorite books, and Skin in the Game is also high up there. But, well, it's an argument for risk. He is making an argument for taking risk.
One of the examples he brought up was that of Roman workers who build a bridge, who then have to sleep under it for a couple of days to make sure that it doesn't fall. And that kind of example I see in the relationship with people who call out all of these social engineers, like Alex Jones is doing, like a lot of these quote-unquote internet trolls are doing from 4chan. This is the lifeblood of our republic, I think. It wasn't before because we didn't have an internet, but it is now. So Gab.com created a tool called Dissecting, which lets anybody comment on tweets, websites that don't have a comment section, but that just get through this third-party application, a Gab comment section loaded up to CNN, MSN, like whatever, Vice. So if we have something like that many people are aware of, that can combat whatever influences these social engineers want to bring to people, that I think gives people a lot more leverage against them. But otherwise, I don't think that a lot of these people do have skin in the game, because if they're not going to have anybody criticize what they're doing, if they're going to lock information like they were doing on Facebook recently, as Project Veritas talked about.
Well, there's skin in the game if there's a backlash, right? Because that's the thing. So I don't completely understand. I've listened to criticisms of Nassim's skin in the game, and I am totally aware of the vagueness in it. Skin in the game is a great inside baseball term, and it's a fantastic heuristic. But when you start trying to apply it to everything, if you try to be a hedgehog person about it, right? So if you try to be, remember that NPR article that said
The Fox and the Hedgehog.
and it said hedgehog people boil everything down, distill everything down to one unifying principle. So if you try to be a hedgehog person with skin in the game, you're gonna come up with some errors, right? So you kind of have to like be able to be a fox person as well while looking at the skin in the game inside baseball term. But the book is phenomenal. It's more than just an argument for risk.
I think another way I like looking at this whole thing is people talk about the elite as being a net negative, and I completely disagree. I think that there is an absolute need to have an elite, not a vertical elite, but a horizontal elite. Basically, people who are good at something, who are then able to influence other people to emulate them, like the Elon Musks of the world, for instance. But then you have other people who are in the elite, some of whom happen to have posters of Chairman Mao in their rooms, and think that it would be a great idea to get rid of.
Dude, I know people with paintings of Mao in their house. And my girlfriend met someone that was showing off their beautiful apartment with a giant Mao painting. Like Mao is hip, the Andy Warhol made that very hip. So I've speculated that I thought Andy Warhol was somehow related to the CIA, possibly as a psyop to demoralize people, right? As a mood and happiness killer to make people dysfunctional. Kind of how Metallica would say, to hardwire people to self-destruct.
I think that the opposite effect is happening from people who are dissatisfied today. Like some people describe being black-pilled, as in they lose faith in humanity. But then I think there are others who, through the use of memetics, through the use of humor, are able to see the funny side of, as they describe it, a clown world, which is their idea of whatever society exists today is this inversion of what's right and orderly, and is just all of this chaos and whatever other negative terms you want to apply to it. And they fight against it through making fun of it. And this is something that is very much disliked by a lot of these Silicon Valley social engineers, like some of the people who were, as they quoted, deboosting content of people like Mike Cernovich, as well as getting rid of troll keywords, or people who were quote-unquote red-pilling normies. And this has to do with Facebook. And these are Facebook engineers who really believe that not only should we eliminate quote-unquote hate, but we should also eliminate things that are very close to hate. Like they really want to get rid of what they see are people who are either pure evil or very close to pure evil. Because sure, you could have people in the elite circles who don't have skin in the game, who don't care about what happens to everybody else. But then you have other people who I think are true believers in this world of universal equality that can only be achieved if we get rid of all the bullies and all the toxic masculinity and all this stuff.
Yeah, and the stigma and bias against religion is bizarre, strange, inconsistent, and uneven-handed. It's becoming more and more obvious. And I saw the kind of things that people were getting deboosted for. We've never done any of that stuff, right? I don't think we're on Culttture now. People are getting banned, but we've never done anything that's even remotely ban-worthy. We're not shouting "re." They said "re" is a war cry. A 4chan war cry.
Oh man, that made my muscle hurt. I did deadlifts today. So yeah, "re" is the sound that frogs supposedly make when you squeeze them, and it's a funny sound, and it just goes to this whole morality play that these neo-Victorians are putting on, just like the Satanic Panic back in the day, where they thought that rock and roll brought kids into the devil's world. And it's just, the whole thing is silly. I think we're going to be looking back at it as being a fragment of a transformative time where we were all trying to figure out what exactly is going on here. And there are people like Alex Jones who bring in not just the stuff that I talked about, which is right out of the horse's mouth, totally legitimate stuff. We could talk about Operation Northwoods, where the U.S. government wanted to create a plan to pretend to down an airliner and even bomb some places where there are civilians in Miami, I believe. And you could also talk about these human-pig hybrids being created in the lab. This was done back in, or at least claimed to be done back in 1998. And Jones says that there's also in 1996 an article from MIT that talks about it. So his whole claim is that all of these things that we're discovering right now were done all the way before, so much so. And this is the part that goes into more of the murky territory that I in no way am able to prove. But his whole shtick is that the technology that we have right now, this webcam, this microphone, this is all baby stuff compared to what is out there in these, as he calls them,
they got the Wakanda tech.
What?
They got the Wakanda tech. Wakanda
exactly,
is
the
real.
breakaway civilization.
Wakanda is real. And Killmonger might be right? Because like, what was the whole argument? The problem with Killmonger is he had a terrible personality and he was like a super mean person. But as far as like how to get the throne and make the technology available to everyone, he was spot on. That is the truth.
It's mixed with that, as well as this Matrix type idea that the people who are around today are used for nothing more than juice, battery, however it is you want to associate that with anything that could be based in reality. The closest thing I could associate that with, as far as some of the more extreme stuff that we've talked about, was also something that Jones brought up, which is adrenochrome.
Well, I'm interested in what that is. I've heard you were telling me about adrenochrome years ago before I even started looking into this rabbit hole. And I just remember being like, Lev, stop. I just remember being like, stop. There's so many other things to talk about. And then, okay, full disclaimer, before you explain what adrenochrome is, I just want to say, random side note, Mao Zedong is a religion, right? It's in the same, like if you were to make a religion tree, it's in the same category as the Kim Jong-il religion.
So adrenochrome, with that being said, adrenochrome is a chemical compound produced by the oxidation of adrenaline or epinephrine. I mean, with that being said, the conspiracy theory around adrenochrome is that it could be extracted through the adrenal gland. And supposedly there are these occult rituals that certain really evil and really well-off people participate in, where they extract this stuff from somebody who is in tremendous pain or fear, and that stimulates the adrenal gland, activates certain psychic powers, and when they would consume...
Stop with the psychic powers. Stop with the psychic powers.
I'm not going to stop because we're already right now in this field of murkiness.
No, what is that? There's no psychic powers. You need so much more context. That is not, you have not earned that. That is bogus. I'm pulling out the James Randi card.
Then here's how I am going to earn it. I'm going to earn the psychic powers thing by not associating psychic powers, which is something that you can look at and prove, here they are, here I can levitate, I can move stuff around.
Dude, it's all about that animal intuition. It's that animal intuition. Psychic has too much woo in it, right? So you need to start with conveying animal intuition and how we perceive each other's emotions and hormones and things like that, and how there might be a part in the brain designed as a receiver for anomalous information. If you're speaking in a way that people will understand it, I was just watching John Oliver had a bit on psychics. The psychic jokes are gonna rev up, right? So some people who have spent way too much time watching Akira and think the government has secret psychic programs and blah, 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 and they're suppressing the information, and that there's people with knowledge about how to make people parapsychologically ill with just deft imprinting and neurolinguistic programming and all that jazz. They're saying that there are people in power or people with superior information that know how to make other people parapsychologically ill, right? And then I think we have generals who specialize in parapsychology. So if you're gonna say psychic abilities are activated when you're harvesting adrenochrome from like a person you're torturing, so their adrenaline is activated and stuff, I think you gotta cut out the woo. You gotta make sure you're cutting out all the mysticism for all our Church of the Subgenius stuff and religious stuff. And because suddenly it's like everybody's pointing the finger at each other, like in Reservoir Dogs, and then everyone goes down, but like nobody knows who shot Nice Guy Eddie.
Here's how I can break it down then in the least amount of woo possible, based on my own experiences as well. If you're talking about something that stimulates the release of adrenaline, it's a breathing technique that I've talked about before, that I do the Wim Hof method. And that's also something that makes the center of my eye line pulse, and it gives me various psychedelic visions.
I wrote an endocrine system entry into Wikipedia. I mentioned how there's a scene in the movie Election, the MTV film, which has like Abraham Lincoln everywhere as little Easter eggs. But at the end, Matthew Broderick is working at the Natural History Museum in New York, and he's like teaching kids about the endocrine system and like the urinary system. And it's like a weird scene, right? Because the endocrine system is so esoteric and obscure, right? Like you really have to do your homework and even know what that is. It's not like something you like open a biology textbook and you're like, oh, the endocrine system, right? And so I added that to Wikipedia and it was up for a while, but it has since been removed. I also mentioned how in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, they were talking about adrenochrome. You told me about that. And Gary Busey once threatened someone and he was like, I will rip your endocrine system out of your body. So these jokes are funny. I saw Nautilus was writing an article about the endocrine system, and Big Think had that fishy article about why fish might want to eat their babies because of things it does. So, I mean, how does science work, right? You collect anomalous information, you make a theory, and you have to hold on to uncertainty. Science is a process, right? Feynman said, the only thing that you can be certain of is that you're uncertain, right? So I think it's weird when people are trying to say that. I saw some, like the Baffler was saying that Feynman is like a bad quantum physicist or something. He's a bad scientist because of, it's so hard to keep up. It's exhausting.
Well, the only thing we can do is put things one piece at a time together. And that's kind of what I was doing with this Alex Jones thing and relating to all of these metaphysical things he was talking about from this conversation about the adrenochrome consumption. Because why would these people be doing such a thing? They'd be doing it so they, according to Jones, have access to all these supposed other realms where they contact these machine elves who then give them information on how to build some technological stuff.
Machine elves. Stop with the machine elves, dude.
I'm not, no, dude, I'm not going to. Don't kill the messenger. This is the stuff that Alex Jones was talking about. I said this is murky territory. I am not going to stop it because it is fun to think about. And it's something that has a deeper association with a lot of these different things that people have been experiencing. For example, I was at a psychedelic conference in New York City where MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, they were doing an experiment with people taking DMT and then reporting the stuff that they ended up seeing. So much like we were talking before about supposedly these people having meetings with these other demonic beings, here were some of the predictions about the future that the test subject of MAPS were bringing back. So, quote, all I could gather from the almost alien-like being was that he was going to save us one day. The being shared knowledge of a cataclysmic event that would lead to evolutionary progress for humanity. Everything will be okay for us. History repeats itself. Humanity is being prepared for the next level of understanding. I saw a great battle between good and evil. The outcome I could not determine, as if the strengths seemed equal. I will die in my 60s from something I can prevent. World War III, global economy crash, pestilence, famine, death, and conquest, and lots of vampirism. And here's an interesting one that I think goes to what Alex Jones was saying. Space travel won't be happening on huge spaceships. It will all happen inside our minds. We do not need bodies to be anywhere.